Okay, let's get started. Welcome. I'm Bruce Reardon with BayCAN, and Yeshi Sauls from BayCAN is at the controls for the chat room and everything else. So Yeshi, say hello, please.
Hey everybody, welcome. Glad you're here. I'll be helping monitor the chat function, which we recommend you all use during this call. And as Bruce already mentioned, would also highly recommend folks turn on their video if they haven't already. It helps these meetings feel more personal and connective, as we usually have sub-regionals in person. So yeah, thanks for doing that if you're able.
Great. Let's start with introductions and then I'll quickly run through the agenda. We're slated to go till 2:30. I think our original invite weeks ago said till 3, but we think for a virtual meeting here, 90 minutes is a good maximum length. So we're going to do some great work here in an hour and a half with you. We look forward to hearing from you as we go through the agenda. But let's do introductions and keep it somewhat orderly. Let's start with this is Central Bay, so let's start with San Francisco. Anybody who works in San Francisco, or actually anybody who's also in residence in San Francisco today, please unmute yourself, give us your name, rank, and organization.
Hi, this is David Behar. I'm the Climate Program Director at the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission and Chair of the BayCAN Steering Committee.
Hi, this is Shannon Fiala from the San Francisco Bay Conservation and Development Commission. I'm the Manager of Long Range Planning there.
Hi, this is Amber Levitt. I'm also from BCDC and I'm a Civic Spark Fellow there.
Others from San Francisco, either working in San Francisco or right now residing in San Francisco.
I can go next.
Hi, Zoe Siegel with Green Belt Alliance.
Hi, Zoe, you were a little garbled there. Say it again, please, for everyone.
Sorry, Zoe Siegel, Green Belt Alliance.
Perfect, thank you. Who's next?
It's Nicholas Sander from BCDC working on the Adapting to Rising Tides program.
Great. While we're doing introductions, if you would rename yourself, you could pick any name you want, actually. No, for our purposes, if you could rename yourself, and Yeshi, where's that icon?
Yeah, so if you just look at your little face in the corner, in the top right corner where your camera is, if you press the 3 dots in the top right corner and then go down to rename, you can put in, if you would, your first name, last name, and your organization or jurisdiction. That would be really helpful for us.
Yeah, it'd be great to have your organization or even an abbreviated name for your organization so we can see all of you in that manner and you can be seen by the others. So I've got a few more people in the waiting room and then so we're bringing them in. We're up to 30 people. Welcome. So let's keep going with introductions. Anyone else in San Francisco today or working in San Francisco? Okay. And if you could mute your phone when you're not, or your computer when you're not talking, that'd be helpful. We all have a little more background noise, I think, than usual, maybe. So if the kids next door come over and start playing basketball on the hoop and it rings in here, I'll tell you. So let's do Alameda County. Let's start with the County of Alameda. Who's here today from the County of Alameda?
I'm Allie Abers with Alameda County Planning Department.
Welcome.
Sarah Church, Sustainability Project Manager and Vice Chair of BayCAN Steering Committee.
Carolyn Blady, Alameda County Sustainability Program Manager.
Amia Sood, Alameda County Sustainability Fellow. Melissa Brownlee, Alameda County Climate Corps Fellow.
Okay. How about from cities in Alameda County? or agencies headquartered in Alameda County, like East Bay Mud?
Hi, this is Alice Tui. I'm the manager of water conservation at East Bay Mud.
Welcome, Alice.
Hi, this is Eric Pearson. I'm Environmental Services Manager for the City of Hayward.
Welcome.
Jennifer Koo, also with East Bay Mud.
This is Katie Van Dyke. I'm with the City of Berkeley. I'm the Climate Action Program Manager.
This is Jackie Zipkin with East Bay Dischargers Authority.
Welcome, Jackie.
Patrick Pellegrino Day from the City of Alameda.
Patrick, you have a little more volume, be helpful. Say again.
Oh, Patrick Pellegrino Day from the City of Alameda.
Thanks.
Hi, Jose Mafra, the Sustainability Manager at the City of San Leandro.
Jack Steinman, Climate Corps Fellow with the City of Hayward.
Taylor Richard, Climate Corps Fellow with the Hayward Area Shoreline Planning Agency.
Welcome. Okay, how about Contra Costa County, our third for the Central Bay?
Hi, this is Shay Rajagopal with the Contra Costa Water District, and I'm a water resource specialist here.
Excellent. Anyone else from Contra Costa County today?
Sorry, Bruce, I think Maureen couldn't make it today.
Okay, we've got you, Shay. Okay, how about groups that encompass all of the area? So you aren't a specific county, but you do maybe the entire Bay Area. Who do we have today?
Warner Chabot, the San Francisco Estuary Institute.
Susan Silver with the Northern California Resilience Network.
We got BCDC earlier. We have a couple of people from BCDC. Anybody else? Who did we miss here in introductions?
Hello, everyone. Sorry I'm late. I'm Danielle, and I'm with SF Planning. I'm on the Resilience and Sustainability team.
Welcome, Danielle. We're just getting started.
And I'm Liz McElligott from the Alameda County Planning Department.
Welcome. Anyone else that we missed on introductions? Last chance.
Yeah, hi folks. Lauren Eisel, Community Action for Sustainable Alameda.
Welcome, Lauren. Okay, great. Well, thank you very much and welcome. Thanks for giving us your time in this extraordinary time that we're living through and working through. We have a good agenda for you today. We're going to start with kind of the round robin that we usually do at these sub-regional meetings. We have 30 of us on the call today, so we'll ask people to maybe stick to a minute or 2 minutes at the very most.
Bruce, can you share your screen so we can see the agenda as you go over it?
Yeah, I was having a little trouble with that. Hold on. Got it? Can you all see it?
Yep.
Great. It's somehow cutting off my pictures of you today, but I'll get back to you in a minute. Nope, this is actually not it, is it? Or, oh no, got it.
Right.
Okay. So we're going to do the round robin, like I said, of projects, programs, and you could also throw out, if you don't want to throw out a big project or a program you're working on, something you want to share with the group, you could share a problem that you're having and ask for input either here or offline. And then next, we're going to do a segment on the public safety power shutoff, PSPS, COVID-19, and the 2020 fire season. After that, we'll do a short piece on communication on climate and COVID-19. We've got some things to show you and some things to show you on the BayCAN website on that and get some feedback from you. on both that one and on the previous one on the PSPS about what you'd like to do, what you'd like to see BayCAN provide on those items in the next 6 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, something like that. And then we'll finish up with news and information from Sacramento, from the A to A new working group here and from the equity working group, and some news and information from all of you. So I'm gonna go back to seeing everyone's face. I will tell you we're recording the meeting, so we record these meetings and post them on the website with a link to the YouTube home for each one of these. So let's start with this idea of what's a project or program you'd like to share with the group that you think would be interesting, or a problem that you're having that you'd like to get some feedback on. And let's start with, again, West Bay, San Francisco. Anyone either working in San Francisco or right now residing in San Francisco, give us a problem or a project or a program that you're working on. Who'd like to go first?
I would be happy to go first. This is David. So I think I may have mentioned this at the regional meeting, but we, through the Water Utility Climate Alliance, another coalition I'm involved with, are doing a mainstreaming of climate adaptation project in collaboration with Denver Water. They're another pilot. We actually did a framework for looking at climate vulnerability in areas of utility that don't normally, at least at this point, go there for us. So the water people have been doing evaluation of vulnerability of water supply for a while. The wastewater people have been looking at vulnerability to sea level rise for coastal assets for a while, but the business function mapping project that we're in now will bring in health and safety, business services, which is a wide term that includes a lot of different areas, and watershed management to the conversation, and just kind of frame out with a series of meetings, a look at very simple climate projections for the future, and then a tabletop exercise at the end of the project, which now is scheduled for July. It was going to be May, and that could slip a little more, to kind of frame the adaptation or the climate vulnerability for those areas in the context of other vulnerabilities that they see. So it's called mainstreaming because it's intending to kind of bring this information to folks who aren't thinking about it all the time, because it's not the first thing that they need to think about. It isn't for water or wastewater either, but we're doing that work in a lot of cases already. And it's a really interesting project that, like I said, it ends in a tabletop exercise where we're really going to game out the vulnerabilities looking out through 2070 and give the staff involved, which will be 3 or 4 from each of those business units, a chance to kind of see how vulnerability plays out when you think about warming and precipitation changes and other things. So heat impacts on workers in the field will come up, the impact on our budget of different water supply regimes playing out over time because of climate change, the nature of species changes in the watersheds, and things like that are going to be what we focus on. So it's kind of an interesting project that we're in right now. And I'll just say really quickly that for those interested in decision making under deep uncertainty, the water supply folks under Alexi Dufour, the project manager, who's one of our hydrologists, is getting ready to, I think, publish soon an analysis of the vulnerability of our water supply using a wide range of temperature and precipitation impacts that don't depend on projections, but are just kind of phrasing or framing out the vulnerability based on all of the possibilities that exist. So that's a sort of like adaptation pathways. Decision scaling is an approach that doesn't start with projections, but starts with vulnerability and then looks at all the possibilities and goes from there. Kind of a bottom up.
Thank you.
Okay.
David gets to go over time because he's the chair.
Sorry, yeah.
I just want to point that out for modeling the behavior, Mr. Bihar. So let's stay in San Francisco. Danielle, in planning, you got a project or program you want to tell us about?
Sure, yeah, thanks. We are doing a lot of support in the short term of adopting the HCR, the Hazards and Climate Resilience Plan of San Francisco, to optimize the funding that the city receives from FEMA and also state in light of COVID. That's attached to some of our long-range planning work of updating the general plan, particularly the safety element to comply with SB 379 and SB 1000, which is about environmental justice. So short-term, getting money from FEMA, long-term updates to the general plan for a lot of the good legislation passed in the past few years.
Great. Anything on the web at this point that others that are doing that could look at, or is it all too premature for that?
The HCR has a website through One San Francisco, I believe, and we're waiting for final adoption from the Board of Supervisors. And for the general plan updates, there isn't any updates to the website yet. So if you have any specific questions, you're welcome to email me.
Great, thanks. And if you could put maybe the link in the chat function, and if we can all use the chat function for documents, we'll take that as part of the notes for the meeting. It'll be great. How about we have BCDC headquartered in San Francisco. You have a big workshop tomorrow. Who wants to talk from BCDC to a couple of things that you're doing?
Yeah, I can go ahead. Hi, this is Nick from the art program at BCDC. We really have three things going on right now that we can talk about. One is we just released the Art Bay Area report for the whole region. I'll put the link in the chat window. Please take a look. We're trying to think about the future of going through a local roadshow. Obviously, this all got thrown into the disarray with the COVID situation, but we're trying to link in more to local processes and see where we can support you guys. The second thing, what Bruce just mentioned, the workshop that's happening tomorrow, which I will have to be in a training session in 10 minutes, so I'm going to mute myself. I'll send a link in that as well in the chat. Please join if you can. Registration is open. And lastly, we're working a little bit on the financing piece to figure out, but say the least, that has changed a lot with the recent situation and probably will be changing in the coming months. But trying to get a grasp for ourselves and also support where funding and financing is in the climate world and how we can push that forward for the Bay Area.
Great, thank you. Shannon or Amber, anything quickly to add for BCDC?
Yeah, I'll just add that BCDC is also working on creating a guidance document for the Bay Plan's climate change policies. So not amending those policies now, they were added to the Bay Plan in 2011, but working on a guidance document for internal and external use to help clarify and just guide the applicants and staff through the requirements of those policies. So that should be out sometime this summer, but it's in development.
Thank you. Great. Thank you, BCDC. And again, a link in the chat function to if you haven't registered for the workshop tomorrow, 2 hours from 10 till noon with the regional shoreline adaptation strategy, or now being called Bay Adapt or Bay Adapt / sea level rise, something like that. You'll hear about it tomorrow. Zoe Siegel, how about Greenbelt? Got a couple of things for us?
Yeah, we are nearing the end of our strategic planning process and really focusing a lot more on fire and resilience, and working with a couple of different regions on updating climate action plans and general plan updates to bring more climate focus into both of those processes.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Zoe. And if you've got, Greenbelt folks is making a big turn, or has been making a big turn, to really focus quite a bit on climate impacts and adaptation and land use and all, with all of their usual great work they've been doing for many years now here in the Bay Area. So you might want to check out the Greenbelt website. How about let's move over to Alameda County and start again with the county itself. So someone want to lead off for Alameda County?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Sarah in our sustainability office. So big focus right now in the shelter-in-place context is an up to CAP 2.0 process. Our CAP was from 2010 and had 80 measures. So we're hoping to have a more streamlined CAP that will incorporate more about adaptation and equity, and have clear policy targets, and we've been doing a lot of this, but also tracking progress. So for those who have a recent CAP deliverable that does well with any of those sections, feel free to reach out and send to me. And also, I'd like for us to be in touch with those that are currently working on CAPs in this group so that we can be aligned. We are going to be incorporating also what we learned about implementation of adaptation projects through our work on wildfire smoke and on heat in the county, which we've shared a bit about. And I will turn it over to others. I think Liz from our planning department may want to share.
Sure. Others, Alan from Alameda County.
Yeah, this is Liz McElligott from the County Planning Department. And we too, we don't really have projects underway per se, but we too are looking at starting our safety element amendments to implement SB 379 and also SB 1000. We're in the preliminary stages of kind of figuring out what those projects will look like, and particularly how we're going to integrate environmental justice into our general plan. So that, and of course, the main issue for us is funding. So we're actively looking for funding sources for those projects.
You can put that in the chat function, see if anybody here has, that was humor, I'm sorry. Doesn't translate all the time. So we're trying though. There were a couple of questions, Liz and Sarah, there that you ought to put in the chat function, I think, just about looking for people that are doing their own version of what you're doing right now. Liz, in starting in on the SB 379 work and all of that, and see who else is either doing that right now or about to start it, and others could use the chat function. We've got plenty of people here from the East Bay, and we had our meeting in the North Bay and South Bay, so we got some of this input from those groups as well. But just to give us a sense from this group, Central Bay, that'd be helpful, I think.
Thank you.
Others, yeah. Others from Alameda County, just to quickly join in.
Are we on the actual county still, or?
We're still in the county. Hold on just for a minute, Alice. Anybody else from the county itself? Okay. All right. So Alice, you're on East Bay Mud.
Sorry, I just had some caffeine, so I'm too eager. Hi, so Alice Tui, East Bay Mud. I think it's been a while since I've been at one of these meetings. So I guess for me, the big update is a few months ago, I got a new position at East Bay Mud. I'm managing our water conservation division now. So the big activity we're working on is we're just kicking off work on our water conservation master plan. That's a 10-year document. It's going to show how we meet the requirements of a lot of the new state regulations having to do with water efficiency, and then also kind of shows our shift. We're kind of moving away from rebates and things like that, and kind of more into sort of leveraging information technology, using kind of smart tools to help people better manage their water use, and also a continuing focus on outdoor irrigation and trying to get people to, as much as possible, move to water efficient plants. So that's, I think, the big news in water conservation at East Bay Mud.
Great. Thank you, Alice. How about cities now in Alameda County? So maybe Hayward, Eric Pearson, if you'd lead off for the cities. Eric?
Sure. Hi. Yeah, so in Hayward, we are coordinating with our partner agencies in the HASPA, the Hayward Area Shoreline Planning Agency. So we're working with the two other partners beside this regional park district. So together we're working on a shoreline master plan, and with funding from Caltrans Transportation Planning Grant. We recently released a draft design alternatives document that's on our website now, and I'll post the link in a moment. And then we're currently collecting comments on the the draft design alternatives, and then hope to formulate a preferred alternative by the end of April, and then start working on a draft plan from there. So we've been having some challenges. We wanted to present this to our city council last week, but the council is limiting agenda items to only the essential items. So, and then we also had to cancel our regular HASPA board meeting. So we're, finding ways to collect input from our board members and the public electronically.
Great. Thank you, Eric. Similar predicament, I'm sure, for a number of our cities and counties and special districts. We also have Jack and Taylor from Hayward. Anything else to throw in here on your work there, HASPA and Hayward? Okay. When we were on East Bay Mud, I should have also asked Jennifer Koo, who's on the call. Jennifer, did you have something else from East Bay Mud that you'd like to throw in?
I guess kind of minor from the wastewater perspective. We're working on sea level rise design guidelines for our facilities that are located near the bay. So just trying to figure out how to best plan for future projects to adapt to sea level rise.
Great, thank you. Okay, others, Katie, Berkeley.
Hi. So our staff, I'm in the sustainability office, and our staff has been kind of temporarily moving into doing some work for our EOC. So we've been working a lot on helping our local businesses obtain some grant money. So we're kind of in the short term helping with some response, and in the longer term we're trying to work on resilient recovery. So trying to help the community rebuild in a way that's even more resilient than business as usual and the previous normal that we once knew. So we're kind of trying to think strategically about that.
Great.
And from a sea level rise perspective, we have a draft report on a sea level rise study for the marina that was in response to a state legislation, and then we're also and then there's also some additional sea level rise work going on, and I was just notified there's like a very large project on our aquatic park that's kind of going through design process right now, so that has a lot of sea level rise potential implications as well.
Great, thank you, Katie. How about Jackie with EBDA?
Sure. So we have recently been engaging with the folks at HASPA and East Bay Parks on the Shoreline Master Plan. As I think I've talked about before, we have a grant to do a design and permitting of a horizontal levee along the East Bay shoreline. And so that that project is integrated with the HASPA master plan. So we're waiting until that master planning process proceeds a little bit and they have a preferred alternative. And then we're going to release an RFP for design services for a full-scale horizontal levee in the Oraloma Marsh area. And also a study of nature-based solutions for sea level rise a little further south in the Hayward oxidation ponds. So we've been drafting that RFP. It's almost ready to go. We're just sort of waiting for the HASPA process to move along a little bit further so that we're integrated with that.
Thank you. Good luck with all of that. How about we'll stay in the neighborhood, city of San Leandro.
Hi, so we are also in the climate action planning process right now. Originally, we were going to have our second workshop with the draft strategy sometime in May or June, but because we had COVID and because we had a really good turnout for the first workshop, we're looking to postpone the workshop probably late summer, early fall, depending on how things go. So at the moment, we're just kind of drafting the strategies and kind of, I think we'll start with the internal city departments and other agencies first to get their first review, and then reaching out to other community partners for their feedback before going out to the public. So definitely would love to chat with Sarah Church and others, and especially on thinking about the integration of equity and other frontline concerns. So would love to chat about that. And I think otherwise, our emergency management specialist has started work on the PSPS work, and I think would be very interested in hearing about some of the things that BayCAN is doing.
Great, thank you. How about City of Alameda? We have a couple people from the city itself and from CASA. So why don't you jump in and tell us what's going on the island there?
Sure. This is Patrick on the staff side. We are adjusting our climate work, like in Eric's case. We were waiting on council. We were actually supposed to go to council for our annual report the week that, like the day that shelter in place started. So that was gonna give us policy direction for the coming year, and we're hoping to instead have that meeting mid-May, which is a delay. And we were getting ready to start a communications plan and an urban forestry plan that we were hoping to also bundle some carbon sequestration and adaptation and kind of community gardening goals into, and both of those, just funding stuff is up in the air, and in general, city leadership is looking for where we can reduce budgets for planning work and other non-staff cuts. So a little bit up in the air, and we'll see how it moves forward and how to make do with less money. And I think I mentioned it last time, but we were hoping to have a big, potentially put a big infrastructure bond on the ballot in November for sea level rise projects, and that is almost definitely not going to happen.
Yeah, we're going to hear that story. We'll get to the Sacramento story on that one in a little bit. Lauren, CASA.
Yeah, this is Lauren from Community Action for Sustainable Alameda. We're a nonprofit citizens organization group, and we've been sponsoring and supporting different community meetings that are where we have the climate reality folks come in and give presentations to our our local residents. And we've had 3 or 4 so far that we've sponsored in the past few months, and they've been very well received. So CASA is sort of supporting the city in the community outreach and really getting the community members engaged. And we're also talking with all of our colleagues and our neighbors about the links between the COVID scenario and climate change and climate risk, and really supporting our neighbors in using this time in lockdown to get to know each other and to create localized resilience in their individual neighborhoods. And that seems to have been going quite well. So we're very happy about those efforts.
Excellent. How about in Contra Costa, and then we'll get to kind of our all region folks. Contra Costa, Shay from Contra Costa Water District.
Sorry, I had myself on mute. So right now at the Contra Costa Water District, we're mostly focused on core operations because of the current situation. Though, there are groups of us who are continuing to work on some other projects. I think I'll maybe highlight two of them. One is the Los Vaqueros expansion project, which some of us and even I am highly involved in. That is, moving ahead. Very recently, we had the Bureau of Reclamation and the state water project getting permits from federal and state services. And there is, of course, some tension at the moment because some of those permits are kind of in conflict with one another, and they have actually started litigation, or at least they're, I think, in the process of filing litigation against one another. So we'll see how all that goes. But outside of that project, the other thing I would like to maybe bring up to this group and we can talk about later is we are preparing for the public safety power shutoffs. There are, basically, we have some type of basic analyses that we have done from the past year, and we have figured out what is one potential approach that works well for our district. And we are taking some of those findings to the board and trying to get some money set up, as we'll need some of those budgets to work on these PSPS events as they unfold later in the year. So those are two things I'd like to share with you folks today.
Thank you, Shay. Welcome to the group.
Thank you.
A couple of organizations, at least, that are working across many counties. So Susan Silver with NorCal Resilience Networks. I bet you've been busy lately.
Oh, yeah. So a couple of things. We just signed a memorandum of understanding with the Urban Sustainability Directors Network to really expand resiliency hubs across East Bay and beyond. And that's really looking at sites as demonstration sites for resiliency, including, solar and battery power backup in the case of, blackouts. And so I'd love to understand if any of you are interested in the concept of resiliency hubs in your city. And
Susan, you're cutting out on us. Yeah, right after that last question about wanting to know who else was doing this, then you kind of cut out on us.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, just don't turn your head.
Okay. So yeah, we're just been doing a lot of food efforts, different hubs, different sites. Just handed out a bunch of mini grants to support more garden growing and things like that. So yeah, been very, very busy lately.
Good. And I
with
think,
yeah.
Sounds very interesting. You were a little garbled, so if you could put a couple of things on the chat function, Susan, that would be helpful. And we can see, you can put your question there about who else is thinking about this. I assume that these resilience hubs are for people. They're not kind of a policy or kind of thing. It's about people getting help themselves during a disaster or PSPS or whatever. Is that correct? Sorry, you're garbled again. I'm sorry, Susan. Just put the answer. If I was wrong about that or whatever, put it on the chat function. We'll get it there. Thanks. Werner Chabot, SFEI. Werner. Werner may have stepped away. He's running a 75-person organization. As the ED, you might expect that he's got a few things going on with people at the while you're trying to do all the business of SFEI. Werner, are you there or not? Okay. Who'd we miss? Anyone that we've missed on this round robin to give us a project or a program? Just introduce yourself. And a couple people came in after we did introductions, and I admitted you. Sorry, I had to wait in the waiting room for a couple of minutes for me to get hip to that feature here. But anybody else want to throw in a project or a program?
Yeah, I'd love to hear from the people we have still on the line from SF. I know we have folks on the line from SFO, and then we also have Alex from the Office of Resiliency. If you want to chime in.
I guess I'll try, and the prompt is, and I'm still catching up a little bit, the prompt is like what we're currently working on.
Yeah, just quickly, a project or a program, something that's of interest to the group to share.
I guess a project, my office got roped into, well, like my entire office pretty much has been activated for COVID response. We're a small shop of like 9 people. So we have gotten a little bit derailed on climate resilience stuff, but we are working on the economic recovery framework, and we're assembling an economic recovery task force. And we're seeing how to work in just transition perspectives and like making new economy, like new economies of fields, like in the climate sector, and doing mitigation work as a part of the economic recovery response for the city. So that might be of interest to people.
And if you would put a little bit maybe with your link to in the chat function, we're using that today to try and get more info here
For sure.
the others can see, and that'll make it into the notes. Matt, do you have something from SFO for us?
Sure. Can you guys hear me?
Absolutely.
Great. My apologies for being late, and also had some technical difficulties with my laptop here. Hi everyone, my name's Matthew D. I'm with SFO, Planning, Design, and Construction. Currently serving as a project engineer for our shoreline protection program. Overall, our program is still in planning. The goal is to protect the airport from the flooding risks that we have right now on the FEMA 100-year flood, and also looking to implement adaptation to future sea level rise. So currently we're in planning, and you know, it's going to be a long permitting process. We're looking at 3 years, and yeah, it's going to be a big project.
Great, thank you, Matt. How about Lindy Lowe just joined us a few minutes ago. You got an update for us on the seawall or something else over in the city?
Yeah, so we are advancing work on the full 7.5 miles, not just the 3 miles of seawall along the San Francisco waterfront from Aquatic Park to Heron's Head Park, looking at both seismic and flood risk, with seismic being the predominant hazard that we're looking at addressing in the seawall segment, which is from Fisherman's Wharf to Mission Creek, and then looking at current and future flooding. We have an Army Corps flood study that's ongoing, so we're working very closely with the Army Corps. Right now, we have divided the waterfront up into 15 sub-areas, and we are matching measures and alternatives to each one of those sub-areas. Tomorrow, we have an Envision workshop with outside design teams who are going to help us think about what a San Francisco waterfront resilient to 2100 might look like. So we're really planning at all 3 of these scales. Our biggest challenge right now is how to get this information out to the public and decision makers to start getting input on these alternatives so we can pick a project to start building by the end of this year.
Great, thanks, Lindy. Thanks for the update on that big project. Okay, folks, if you have something else that you'd like
I want to introduce someone really quick, Bruce. Sorry,
yeah.
But I know that we have Amos on the line, and wanted to make sure his voice got in here. He is calling in from CASA, as well as founder and CEO of the 100,000 Trees Initiative, and he just wanted to talk briefly about that initiative before we move on.
Great, welcome, Amos.
Oh, well, thanks. Thanks, Jesse. Hi, Bruce and everyone. This is Amos White, or I'm Amos White. Sorry. Altered universe here on Zoom calls all day. We are working with 100,000 Trees for Humanity tree planting initiative, both launched here in Alameda, with the goal of planting 100,000 trees on island here over the next 10 years. We're also partnering and working with city of San Leandro and other municipalities here that are also interested in getting tree planting, both as a community resiliency strategy and also as a carbon sequestration and reforestation strategy here to help augment carbon action planning goals. And that's just some of the work we're doing here. I just wanted to share that with everyone.
Great.
So thank you.
And we're using the chat function today, so, and I see some very good things going into it. So as we move on now to the next item on the agenda, which is about the PSPS and BayCAN's participation, yours in all of that, please use the chat function to add another project or program or something that we didn't get a chance to get to here today. So let me, give me a second to share my screen here, and PSPS. So you should be able to see now the PSPS memo that we sent out. Yes? Can we have a yes on that?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. So what we did was take all the work that you, the input you had about public safety, power shutoff, and what your organization or city or county is either doing or could be doing, planning to do as the fire season approaches. We took all that input from the February 20th discussions. If you remember, this was the first of our table discussions that day. And what you can see here is that we have then compiled that information, starting with the North Bay and then going to Central Bay. So we took, as best we could, read through the notes and translate them, the key bullet points for each of your organizations that day that you talked about for PSPS work. And we've sent this to you. It's in your email box. We sent it to you probably about an hour ago. This is version 1.1 because we're going to add to it obviously as we go. So BayCAN has entered into some work here. This is about the third piece we've done on the PSPS. And we want to ask you a question here now that you can use the chat function to answer. And that is, going forward now, what would you like to see BayCAN focus on around the public safety, power shutoff, and the fire season and COVID-19, kind of all three of those? So option one, you can answer this in the chat function. Option one would be, we would do a webinar probably next month in May, generally about the PSPS and what your organizations are doing to prepare for it. So more of the same that we did on February 20th, kind of a general approach of sharing what you're doing with the others. Option two, and again, you can kind of vote on the chat function, would focus more on microgrids in the PSPS, which we've seen as a big topic of interest for a number of you, and how that could be developed in your own city or county. So second option would be something that focuses more of the discussion on this microgrid question and strategy for dealing with PSPS. The third option, and again, you can vote on the chat function, would combine kind of PSPS, fire season, and COVID-19. As we talked about at one of our special meetings a couple of weeks ago, if you were with us, the state is doing some work on this, Sonoma County's doing some work on this, and probably others looking ahead and going, uh-oh, what about the collision here of all of the shelter in place work and all of the work, social distancing and all, with fire season coming and either power going off because of a PSPS or an actual fire event or a smoke event and people having to leave or go to evacuation centers, all sorts of things that could be problems. So third option would be we would do a webinar again, but focused kind of on the intersection of the COVID, fire, and PSPS. And finally, you could suggest something else. That would be option four. So one, just general on PSPS, more of that sharing amongst our members here. Secondly, option two, microgrid focus. Option three, more of a COVID, fire, and PSPS. So if you would take a little time as we're going through the rest of the agenda on the chat function to register and give us your preference, and then we'll start to design one or two maybe webinars on this in May. Okay, so thank you for that. So the next item is on communicating on climate and COVID. And you may all be inundated some with articles people are sending you about how to talk about climate in the amidst the COVID emergency, or lessons learned from the actions that we're taking in California and elsewhere, and lessons that we think maybe we could apply to getting much stronger action by individuals and by communities and by government agencies on climate. There are all sorts of things going around, and Yeshi's going to show you in just a minute some of the curated articles that we're putting onto the BayCAN website that might help your understanding of some of these issues, and things that are some interesting things that people are putting out nationally and locally on this. So yes, she'll show that to you in just a minute. You know, one thing I'll just promote for a minute is a Climate Access, the group. You can join for free. Climate Access did a very interesting webinar the other day, and that looked at communications in particular around climate and that's their specialty amidst the COVID time that we're in. And so we'll put a link on the website. It was an hour long. It had Susie Mosier and Ed Magbach and some others. It was very good. And one of the things that came out of that I'll just throw out was that Ed talked about how flattening the curve has just become, you know, kind of the slogan for the last 3, 4, 5 weeks now, and everyone uses it. We all use it. Policymakers are using it. Our governors, you know, everybody's using it, and it goes with a nice graph that you can understand easily. And wouldn't it be great for climate that eventually we could have some, I won't say simpler, but more elegant ways of putting our charts and graphs together that communicate well with people. So I'm sure there are a couple of things out there. I actually saw something this morning and look at it yet on flattening the climate curve, and we could see what that one looks like too. So Yeshi, let me turn it over to you, and let me bring up the website.
Okay, yeah, while you're doing that, I can give a little bit of an intro. So we're just aware and experiencing ourselves that in this time, we're all thinking about how to really draw the overlaps and intersections between the COVID pandemic and the climate crisis. And there's so many articles flying around, I'm sure you all are getting them as well, linking these two contexts and finding ways that we can be learning from COVID in our work around climate. And it's a little inundating. And so we as BayCAN have been compiling as many of those resources as we can and actually curating them for you, specifically in the context of BayCAN members, Bay Area local governments, and organizations, to find the ones that are most helpful for you and put them all in one place so that you can easily access them. And so Bruce is pulling up right now our web page, which I put together, which I'll just walk you through quickly. It has one section specifically on memos and information specifically for local government related to COVID and climate. We have a section on COVID and climate equity. We have another section on tools and resources specifically from within our network. So you all can be seeing who else in BayCAN is doing work and thinking around this so you can collaborate. And then down at the bottom, we just have a general news digest of the articles that we find are the best of the best in terms of linking COVID, climate, communicating climate science in the context of COVID, et cetera. And the intention is to add to this once or twice a week with the best ones and continue to keep it streamlined and refined and not a dump, because you already get that on Google. So the question here is, what would be of most service to you all? Like, what is the information you're really needing on these topics that you want us to do the research for you on, or you want us to be compiling and curating? So would really welcome any initial feedback on this webpage, any of these resources or categories. And then also on a more general level, we're really interested in knowing what you all are thinking about in the context of climate and COVID, and what are the realms that you're really exploring yourself in your work. So would love to open it up to the group for any preliminary feedback or thoughts.
Yeah, this is Alice Tui at East Bay Mud. May I share a thought? I think one thing that's kind of interesting to me looking at this whole situation is, working for, sometimes public agencies, where we can in some ways be kind of slow to change sometimes, or slow to adapt new technology. And, there's been a joke going around the water agencies in the Bay Area that, wow, we've advanced in technology, 40 years in the span of a week, because all of a sudden everybody was trying to get all their staff working from home. And now I'm already starting to hear a little bit of a, sense of like, okay, this has been fun, but we're going to get back to normal and everybody's going to be back in the office. And, and I think to me, one of the things that's been really striking about this time is we've seen the impact on air quality when you have a lot less people commuting. So I think one tool that would be helpful for me is just, thinking of just some tools for communicating, okay, well, what are the lessons that we've learned from this disaster, and how can we kind of apply them in our organization? How can we have those conversations? I mean, I'm using this sort of, commuting as an example here, but I think there are a lot of others, just in terms of, not trying to, take this example and make it a little more broad, and have those conversations with others at the organization, and try to kind of, shift the culture a little.
Great, thank you, Alice.
I agree with that. I think that's a really important lesson I think we need to learn from. I think BayCAN, this came up at another sub-regional, I think BayCAN can learn from this, where we can reduce our carbon footprint. We're reducing the adaptation challenge in the second part of the century and saving our taxpayers and ratepayers money and dislocation. So I think we should take these lessons and apply the good ones.
Yeah, this is Carolyn, Alameda County. I definitely echo that. We did a big push 5 years ago to reduce our carbon footprint, and we have literally deployed thousands of laptops and moved the workforce mobily. And I'd love to think about all of this in terms of resiliency and our ability to keep serving the citizens. I want to be respectful of not pushing the climate thing too far and being perceived as being highly opportunistic. So sort of how to delicately, fold the climate piece into the discussion with COVID, and then really look at this from a resiliency standpoint around wildfire, smoke, heat, sort of all those elements that we need to work on. So any kind of communications or how people are framing the message would be really helpful. And I'm finished. Thank you.
That's very good. There was this is Bruce, there were some good things from that climate access webinar that I mentioned earlier, and we'll put the link on the website, just around that question, that this is not certainly the time to be pushing climate, and especially pushing climate in a fearful way when people are as afraid as we all are, or different emotions from the COVID. And that the last thing we want to do is stand up and say, now, if you think this is bad, here, wait till you see what's coming from my shop, So there was some interesting things said about that on that climate access webinar.
Other thoughts and reflections?
I guess something I've been wrestling with in this work a little bit is kind of like to push back a little bit on the aspect of not talking about climate as much as possible during this time, because it's like often what I've been seeing from looking at the news and stuff is that like the vested interests of like all the organizations that benefit from us not acting on climate are like using this opportunity right now to like really make gains, whether you're looking at like the EPA rolling back a lot of stuff or, yeah. So I think that like maybe some sort of tracker on like what are the shifts that have happened that might not be in the greatest direction, like how how companies are using the COVID crisis to be opportunistic in a way would be a good thing to note. But I guess that's more of with my individual hat on, as opposed to my San Francisco Office of Resilience and Capital Planning hat on. So maybe that's not useful for people, but I think there is a lot of movement in the wrong direction that can be hidden by the fact that we're thinking about COVID so much. So.
Sure, great. Amos, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Alex was just saying. Been looking at it, and there's been some discussion around how companies are putting spin on the crisis. First and foremost, recognizing that this crisis is not going to be the first, nor the last, or has been the first, nor is it going to be the last, nor will other calamities tend to take precedence both in the news, but I don't know if they'll be as globally stopping as this has been. And the spin seems to be with what other companies are doing is putting it towards a message of hope, whether it's from religious organizations, focusing on what have we found in this crisis, such as community, such as how resilient we are, such as how people have come together to actually form networks to actually help one another. And the same thing with other companies and their messaging. It seems to be, or there seems to be messages of hope and finding the positive within the calamity, if you will, of what's going on, to put their message forward and finding an opportunity of, in our sense, it would be in terms of climate or strategies that benefit either climate action plans or climate without really having to mention climate or climate action plans. It's just present the strategy that people resonate with. And that seems to be getting traction. Case in point, our own organization, 100,000 Trees for Humanity, just the message line alone has really found deep resonance throughout communities and with a lot of different organizations. And in return are asking a lot of us that we really cannot meet the demand that is out there as our current model is. However, it does show that people are looking for positive solutions that offer simple tactics and low barriers to entry for their communities to engage now those interests. And I think that's something we could look at too, whether we're looking at other companies that are doing this, like Alex suggested, or other organizations that have taken not advantage of this crisis, but are looking to see what works and to share that more broadly.
Thank you, Amos. Agreed. And folks, you can put items and ideas that you have in the chat function if you don't want to unmute and speak right now on this. And while we have another 20 minutes or so in the meeting, please put your ideas on there. We are going to do more on COVID and climate together and on communications. That's why we're asking you about the webpage and all here. Others? Okay, Yeshi? Anything?
Great.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, I think that's with the time we're at in the agenda, I feel like that is, I feel complete with that piece of things. Thanks for your thoughts and feedback. And yeah, again, if you have specific resources that do come your way on this topic that you think others would appreciate seeing, please send them my way. I'll put my email in the chat, as well as any other thoughts on things you could use BayCAN support around in this realm. Please let us know.
Good. And thank Yeshi for a lot of work to put this together. We're trying again, folks, not to you know, overwhelm you here, but to curate and find, these are all some pretty interesting articles. There are a million out there, and we think we've found some of the best ones. Okay, so last item on the agenda is news and information. I'm going to lead off with a little on Sacramento. David's going to talk about the adaptation, assessment to adaptation, the A to A working group, and then Yeshi about the equity working group, and then we'll have time for a few announcements at the end. So stay with us for that. So Sacramento, just kind of quickly, and maybe some of you could chime in as well, who have had intel from what's going on in Sacramento in terms of budget and legislation around climate adaptation. As you know, and as we talked about in February, the Newsom administration proposed a pretty big climate resilience budget and a bond issue as part of that, but money out of cap and trade for part of that, some money out of this year's budget for that, to increase the funding for planning and projects around climate adaptation and resilience statewide and in local communities. One of the feedback pieces we gave them in February when the budget came out was that more of that money needed to come to local governments and special districts and all like you all are, and maybe less of it in Sacramento. But it was a good start from them. And there's also legislation, AB 2148, AB 2621, and others around kind of placeholder bills right now. There's not much there, but staff are working on, and still are working on, climate legislation that would complement some of the budget work. There's also a bond that's been proposed to be on the ballot in November. So we had worried that all this was going to be dead now. And what we heard last week from our folks that we've been talking with in Sacramento is these things are alive. They're going to be big budget cuts at all levels of government, which is really going to impact us in many ways. But for now, that bond the resilience bond is still being discussed, and they'll probably know in the next week or two, maybe if it's really going to go forward. Pieces of legislation that would complement that around adaptation planning structures, about funding for science, and items like that that we care very much about are still alive. Maybe they're not very alive, but they're still there. And we're going to keep pushing on them, and we'll bring information back as we get it for you. So it's not a great picture, obviously, as you would expect, but it's not as bad as we had maybe worried for a few weeks that all of this was going to go under with the COVID emergency. Anyone else with Sacramento intel to share? Okay, well, we'll keep you up to date. Let's do A to A working group. David, please.
Okay, hi, Bruce, can you do a share screen for me, please?
Yes.
So we talked about this at the regional meeting. It derived from the last set of sub-regionals, which was last year. Let's talk about how to go from assessment to adaptation. This is a national subject matter and one that's quite common in California and the Bay Area in general. We talked about it as a place to test concepts and approaches to contribute to the widening activities and heading toward adaptation in the region. We want to learn from each other as always. We determined the right thing to do would be to start with a focus on sea level rise, because that's a big animator for a lot of folks' work. And we looked at one example in the meeting, which was the adaptation pathways work of the city of Santa Cruz as presented by Tiffany Wise-West, their sustainability director. Let's see. All right, can you guys see those notes here?
We're seeing your screen with a lot of Drive libraries.
That's not right. That is not what I'm supposed to be doing. Hold on. Sorry. So what I'm about to show is a really rough kind of strategic plan for the assessment adaptation work group. How about now? Draft outline?
Maybe you might need to, if you have dual monitors, maybe turn off the other monitor, because maybe it's showing up on one monitor, but it's screen sharing the other.
I don't have dual monitors, but I tried to get this in the front and then I got distracted and I didn't get it to the front.
Yeah. No, David, just talk through it and okay.
All right. So what we're going to do, one is what we did with the equity work group, which was to develop a foundational document that kind of establishes what our goals and activities generally will be as we launch into it, and that needs to be a democratic process that we're all involved with. And so I'm going to ask for 1 or 2 volunteers from this subregion, as we had from the other 2, in order to kind of work through this. As I said, I think we need to focus on case studies. This is what you can't see in front of me. Case studies that exist. We have a number in the Bay Area. Eric talked about the Hayward Regional Shoreline Master Plan. That's a really interesting one. The Shoreline Levee Project in the South Bay is another. The Bay Adapt process, which is going to have a public kickoff tomorrow at the workshop that we mentioned, is an opportunity for participation and comment and engagement. We've heard Jessica Fain a couple of times come to our meeting and say BCDC really wants engagement from the local government community, and that BayCAN can be a mechanism for that. This can occur within the A2A work group to a degree. We can talk about sub-regional collaboration that's going on actively in San Mateo County and being built in other locations. We can look at non-sea level rise examples. Sarah Church has shared some of the heat program work that Alameda County has done and others that might be equally illustrative even in a sea level rise context. And there might be case studies outside the region that are valuable. South Florida, Southern California, etc. In addition to case studies, we might want to look at developing policies or an understanding of leading practices, best practices, reflecting the learning that we've all done on this. And then we need a process, kind of guide for going forward in the A2A work group. And I mentioned the foundational document that we need to draft. The general schedule right now we're thinking about is a first meeting in late April, early May, obviously by Zoom, of the work group. I can't show, because of my tech problems, the list of people who signed up. In this group, I can say Faye is on there, Jack Steinman is on there, Kamya is on there, Lauren Eisel is on there, Melissa Brownlee is on there. I'm just going to read these in case your name is not said, and then you can pipe up. Shay's on there, and Taylor is on there. If there's anyone else who wants to be on the work group, chat me now or raise your hand or whatever. And then I want 1 or 2 people from this work group, from this subregion, if possible, to help with a subcommittee that'll establish a draft foundational document that we would then present at the first meeting of A2A in late April, early May. So first things first, does anyone really want to roll up their sleeves and work on a foundational document drafting process with us? Are y'all shy? You don't want any part of this. All right, I do have a pretty
David,
good group.
how much effort are you thinking is required?
Dozens of hours. No, I don't know. I don't know. It's an outline right now. It should be, a couple of pages to maybe a little more than that. And it's a draft. There's no huge stakes in it because it'll be thought through by the entire 8A work group, that group of about 15 we have so far. I think we'll have a call or 2 and some sharing of documents.
And they can use the
Right
chat function as well.
We have Papendick and Barber from San Mateo County, Ina, who works in Santa Clara County, Jackie from BCDC, Leapster and Chu from Marin, and myself are the work group as of now. If you don't, I'm going to put my email in here. You don't want to speak up now, but you change your mind and want to do something, write to me at the email I'm going to put in the chat now.
Great.
And then if there's anyone who wants to be on the work group who was not among the names that I listed quickly a minute ago, then also email me or chat.
Thank you, David. Yeshi, update from the Equity Working Group.
Sure, yeah. So I definitely don't have anything as elaborate as David's presentation because we've been rolling for a while now as a work group. We have had 4 meetings so far and are on to our 5th on April 30th and have established a really strong community. A lot of folks that are on this call are also in the work group and have had many different meetings with lots of different presentations from folks establishing and presenting on best practices in terms of embedding equity into our adaptation work. Our upcoming meeting in this April 30th is going to be focused specifically on mapping lessons from the COVID crisis onto climate equity work and hopefully having some presentations from folks that are doing COVID response and specifically looking at helping the most vulnerable impacted by COVID at their local government level, and what are those lessons that we can map onto our adaptation work. And so if you're interested in coming to that meeting, please let me know. You're welcome to join us. One of the things we're also thinking of bringing to that meeting is we're thinking as a planning team about the fact that as budgets are getting cut in this time of COVID, equity and environmental justice components to climate work could be some of the first things on the chopping block in budgets and programs. And so potentially the idea of putting together a letter of some kind as a work group to send to legislators or folks writing budgets and just trying to figure out what would be the right way to leverage our collective power as a work group to advocate to keep equity in the budget and in the work plans. So those are some of the things we're thinking about as a work group, and we'll see more of the end of the month. We have a June training coming up, which is being co-designed by myself and our 2 equity consultants, Nahal and Phoenix, and that will be in direct response to needs of equity work group members and BayCAN members as a whole in terms of what you all are specifically needing to get trained up on in this work. And so if you're interested in joining and have any feedback, please let us know. We're designing the curriculum as we speak. And we're also working on a number of tools as a work group. One that you'll hopefully be seeing a draft of not too far into the future, or the work group will, is a resource compilation equity toolkit specifically designed for Bay Area local governments, just curating the best of the best equity tools and resources in a way that is most relevant to our members. And so you'll be seeing that coming up soon, as well as a potential partnership with BCDC on a CBO matchmaker map in which we're hopefully going to be mapping out different CBOs doing resilience work across the Bay. And then that'll be a tool for local governments to see what communities are doing what work and finding it, using it as a tool to connect up with CBOs in their jurisdiction. So those are some of the things we're thinking about, among others. If you're interested in getting involved or want to join either the training or the upcoming work group, please reach out to me. My email is in the chat. And yes, that's all for now.
Great, thanks, Yesh. Great work on the equity working group, and thank you to all of you that are participating with us on that. So we have a BCDC workshop that we mentioned that's tomorrow, 10 to noon. I think there's information in the all-important chat box here about that. But other announcements, we have time for a few minutes just to finish up here. Other announcements of upcoming events or things you want to let the group know about? Okay, hearing none. We'll let you out early here. So look, thanks everyone. Keep up the great work. Keep up the great work amidst this emergency that we're in, the seriousness of our situation, our families, our communities. You know, I'm 71 now. I had a birthday a little while back, and you know, never seen anything quite like this in terms of a global scale. We've seen a number of things that have had pieces of this in a big way, but yikes, this is something that we're going to, you know, it's going to be with us for quite a while. That's one. And we hope that we can continue to make BayCAN relevant to you and your work as we're moving forward here. And as you can tell from the discussion today on PSPS and on communications and some of the other pieces, we're trying to bring in the COVID emergency that we're in the middle of, and make that kind of come to you with that and our climate work, our climate adaptation work. So again, we thank you for being here today and taking the time with us. And that is our wrap up for the BayCAN Central Bay for today. Stay healthy, folks.
Thank
Be
you.
well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.